A hand grabbed her wrist hard enough to leave marks. She yanked back, but the grip tightened. A man twice her size blocked the shelter doorway. His breath reeked. His voice came out flat. "You don't eat tonight." She didn't argue. She slipped through a side door and kept walking. No coat, no money, just cold and a growling stomach pressing against her ribs. 3 blocks later, she finally saw him. An old man sitting alone on a curb in a thin jacket, shaking, lost, confused, barely able to say his own name. Everyone else on that cold sidewalk walked right past him. She stopped. She knelt down beside him. Her name was Lena, and this frail old man she was helping. She had no idea who he really was. So what happened when she brought him home? Something no one could have predicted. Stay with me on this one. Lena worked 3 cleaning jobs, 2 during the week, 1 on weekends. She mopped floors in a medical building at 6 in the morning, scrubbed kitchen grease at a diner by noon, and on Saturdays she cleaned apartments for people who could afford to pay someone else to do it. All of it cash. All of it barely enough. Her apartment sat above a laundromat on the east side of the city. 1 room, a mattress on the floor, a hot plate, a bathroom with a door that didn't lock. The heat worked when it wanted to. Most nights it didn't want to. She'd been on her own since 17. No family she could call. No safety net. No backup plan. Just work, sleep, eat when she could, and keep moving. The shelter was supposed to be for emergencies. Nights when the temperature dropped below what a person could survive with just a blanket. But the men who ran the place had their own rules. You ate when they said. You slept where they pointed. And if someone bigger wanted your spot, you moved. That night, after walking away from the shelter, she almost didn't stop. She was tired. She was hungry. She had nothing to give. But the old man on the curb. He looked up at her, and something in his eyes made her chest tighten. Not pity. Something closer to recognition. Like she knew what it felt like to be invisible. "Hey!" She crouched beside him. "You okay?" He blinked at her. His lips moved, but the words didn't come right away. When they finally did, they were broken, scattered. I was walking. Where is this?" She looked around. No one was coming for him. No car waiting. No family member rushing down the sidewalk calling his name. Just the 2 of them and a street that didn't care. "Can you stand?" He could. Barely. She got his arm over her shoulder and walked him 3 blocks to her building. Up the stairs. Into her apartment. She sat him on the mattress and put on water for tea. He was wearing a thin wool coat. Too nice for the neighborhood but too worn for someone wealthy. His shoes were leather. Scuffed and dirty, but good quality. And on his right hand, a heavy silver ring. Thick band. Some kind of crest on the face. A wolf with its jaw open, circled by what looked like thorns. She noticed it. She figured it was a family heirloom. Some old man's prized possession. She didn't ask about it. She made him soup from a can. Tomato. It was the last one she had. She gave him the whole bowl and drank tea for herself. He ate slowly, his hands shaking around the spoon. "What's your name?" she asked. He paused, looked at her like the question confused him. Then, "Aldrich. Aldrich. Okay. Do you know your address? A phone number? Someone I can call?" He shook his head. Then, very quietly, "My son. He'll be looking for me." "What's your son's name?" Aldrich's mouth opened, closed. He frowned, frustrated. I can't remember right now." She didn't push. She gave him a blanket and told him he could sleep there. She'd figure the rest out in the morning. That night, Lena sat on the floor with her back against the wall and watched the stranger sleep in her bed. She had no idea what she'd gotten herself into. She didn't know that the ring on his hand was the seal of the most powerful bloodline in a world she didn't know existed. She didn't know that his son had been tearing apart the city looking for him for 3 days. And she didn't know that by morning, Everything about her life was going to change. All she knew was that an old man needed help and nobody else stopped. When the sun came up, Aldrich was worse. He couldn't remember where he was. He kept calling her by a different name. Marie. He'd say it softly, then look confused when she corrected him. She made a decision. She'd take him to the free clinic on 4th Street. They had a social worker there, someone who could help track down his family. She walked him 10 blocks in the cold. He moved slowly. She held his arm the whole way. People stared. Nobody offered to help. At the clinic, she filled out a form with what little she knew. Name Aldrich. Last name unknown. Age estimated 70s. No ID. No insurance. No emergency contact. The clerk behind the desk barely looked up. We'll get to him when we can. Lena sat with Aldrich in the waiting room for 2 hours. The plastic chairs were bolted to the floor. A television in the corner played a talk show with the sound off. He drifted in and out. Sometimes he was lucid. He'd look at her and say something sharp and clear. You're a good one. My son would like you. Other times he'd stare at the wall and whisper things she couldn't understand. Then the clerk came back. She'd been scrolling through something on her computer. She walked over, and this time she wasn't bored. She was pale. She looked at the ring on Aldrich's hand and her eyes went wide. Where did you find this man? Lena frowned. On the street. He was lost. The clerk's voice dropped. You need to wait here. Don't leave. Don't let him leave. Now here's the thing. Lena had seen fear before. She knew what it looked like on people who owed money. People who heard a knock at the wrong time of night. But this was different. This clerk wasn't afraid of danger. She was afraid of authority. Like she'd just realized she was holding something that belonged to someone very powerful. Within 20 minutes, 2 men walked in through the front door. Not through the waiting room entrance. Through the front door. Like the locked entrance didn't apply to them. They were big. Not gym big. Military big. Broad shoulders, straight spines, eyes that scanned the room before they took a single step. They wore dark coats. No badges. No identification. But everyone in that waiting room went quiet the second they walked in. One of them looked directly at Aldrich. Then at Lena. His jaw tightened. We're here for him. No greeting. No explanation. Lena stood up. Who are you? That's not your concern. He's confused. He doesn't know where he is. I'm not handing him over to someone who won't even give me a name. The second man stepped forward. He was closer now. Close enough that Lena could feel the heat coming off him. His hand came up. Not to hit her. To move her. To push her aside like furniture. His fingers closed around her arm. And then Aldrich spoke. Don't touch her. It wasn't loud. It wasn't a shout. But every person in that room felt it. The 2 men froze. The one holding Lena's arm dropped it like he'd been burned. They both lowered their heads. Not in fear. In obedience. Aldrich stood. Slowly. Painfully. But when he straightened, there was something in him that hadn't been there before. A stillness. A weight. Like the confused old man had peeled away and someone else was standing underneath. He looked at Lena. Thank you. For everything. Then they took him. The 2 men flanked him and walked him out through the front door. No paperwork. No explanation. The clerk behind the desk didn't say a word. Lena stood in the middle of the waiting room, alone, with her heart hammering. She walked home, made tea, sat on the mattress that still smelled like someone else's coat. She told herself it was just a strange day. A confused old man. Some family with money and security guards. It was over. She washed the bowl from last night, folded the blanket, picked up the clipboard she'd been writing on at the clinic. Aldrich's name, the little details she'd gathered. She set it on the counter and sat down. It was over. She could go back to her life. A knock on her door. Not a normal knock. 3 slow, deliberate hits. Heavy. Like the person on the other side wasn't asking to come in. They were announcing that they were there. Lena opened the door. The man standing in the hallway was not like the two from the clinic. Those men were soldiers. This man was something else entirely. Tall, still, dark hair pushed back. A face that looked like it had been carved from something cold. He wore a black coat that probably cost more than her rent for a year. And his eyes, when they found hers, they didn't look at her. They locked onto her, like something behind those eyes had just woken up. "You helped my father," he said. Not a question. A fact. Lena's hand stayed on the door. "The old man? Aldrich?" "Yes." "Is he okay?" The man studied her. Not the way people look when they're sizing someone up for a fight. The way someone looks when they've found something they weren't expecting. "He's safe. Because of you." "Good. Then we're done." She started to close the door. His hand caught it. Not hard, but firm. The kind of firm that said he wasn't used to doors closing on him. "My name is Cale. I didn't ask." "No, you didn't. That's why I'm telling you." He stepped inside without being invited. Lena backed up, not out of fear. Out of reflex. The apartment suddenly felt half its size. Cale looked around the room. The mattress on the floor. The hot plate. The single window with a crack running through the glass. He didn't say anything about it. No judgment. No pity. But his jaw tightened, and Lena caught it. "Your father was confused and alone on the street," she said. "I helped him. That's it. That's the whole story." "That's not the whole story." "It is for me." Cale turned to face her. And then something happened that Lena couldn't explain. He went completely still. Not the stillness of someone thinking. The stillness of someone whose body had just received information their mind hadn't caught up with yet. His nostrils flared. His eyes widened by a fraction. His hands, which had been loose at his sides, curled into fists. He took one step toward her. She took one step back. "What are you doing?" she said. He didn't answer. Not right away. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. Lower, rougher, like something was pressing on his chest. "You. It's you. What are you talking about?" Before he could answer, the door behind him swung open. A woman stood in the frame. Tall, sharp cheekbones. Hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She was beautiful the way a blade is beautiful. Polished and dangerous. She looked at Lena, then at Cale, then back at Lena. "You're joking." Her voice was ice. Cale didn't turn around. "Sarah, leave. You're in a human's apartment." She spat the word human like it tasted bad. "Your father goes missing for 3 days and this is where you end up? Here? With her? If you're still with me, hit that subscribe button. Because this is where the story turns." Cale moved. Fast. Faster than Lena's eyes could track. 1 second he was standing in the middle of the room. The next he was at the door, his hand flat against it, his face inches from Sarah's. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. "I said leave." Sarah's face changed. The arrogance drained out of it like water from a cracked glass. Something replaced it. Not fear exactly. Submission. She lowered her eyes. Took 1 step back. Then another. Then she turned and walked down the hall without another word. Cale closed the door. Slowly. He turned back to Lena. "Now here's what you need to understand." Lena had just watched a woman walk into her apartment uninvited, insult her to her face, and then get silenced by a look. She'd watched a man move faster than any person should be able to move. She'd felt something shift in the room when Cale recognized her scent. She didn't know what it was, but she knew it wasn't normal. None of this was normal. "You need to tell me what's going on," she said. "Right now." Cale sat down on the only chair in the room. He looked at her for a long moment. "My father, Aldrich. He's not just an old man. He's the former Alpha of the Eastern Territory. He ruled for 40 years before stepping down. He has a condition. His mind comes and goes. 3 days ago he wandered away from the compound and no one noticed until it was too late. Lena stared at him. Alpha. Like a wolf. Like a king. Of wolves. Yes. You're insane. I'm not. And somewhere in you, you already know that. You felt it when those men walked into the clinic. You felt it when I walked through your door. Something in you recognized something in me. You just don't have the language for it yet. Lena's back hit the wall. Not because she was retreating. Because her legs weren't steady. I'm the Alpha King of the Eastern Territory, Cale said. My father was the most powerful wolf of his generation. And you, a woman with nothing. No pack. No bloodline. No status. You stopped on a freezing sidewalk and gave him the only food you had. He leaned forward. Every wolf in my territory walked past him. Humans walked past him. His own guards lost him for 3 days. And you stopped. Lena didn't respond. She couldn't. There's a bond, Cale said, between two wolves. Or in this case, between a wolf and someone who may not even know what she is yet. The bond is called a mate mark. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't care about rank or status or wealth. It chooses. And it chose you. I don't know what you're talking about. You will. He stood, walked to the door, paused. I'm going to send a car for you tomorrow morning. You can refuse. I won't force anything. But my father is asking for you. He remembers you. He remembers your name. In 3 days of wandering, lost, afraid, unable to remember his own son's name, he remembered yours. He left. The door closed behind him. Lena stood in the middle of her apartment for a long time. The car came at 7. Black, tinted windows. A driver who opened the door without a word. Lena almost didn't get in. She stood on the sidewalk in her cleanest clothes, which was a pair of jeans and a sweater with a hole in the left sleeve, and she thought about walking away, going to work, scrubbing someone else's kitchen, forgetting all of it. But Aldrich remembered her name. She got in. The compound was an hour outside the city. Stone walls, iron gates, a main building that looked more like a fortress than a house. Guards at every entrance. Men and women who moved with the same coiled energy as the two from the clinic. Cale met her at the front steps. He looked different in daylight. Not softer, but more real. Like the version of him she'd met in her dark apartment had been a shadow. And now she was seeing the full thing. He didn't say much. He led her inside. Down a long hallway. Through a set of double doors. And there was Aldrich. He was sitting in a high-backed chair by a window, clean, dressed in wool and linen, his silver ring polished, his hair combed, but his face. When he saw Lena, something lit up in it, something warm and clear and completely lucid. There she is, he said, and he smiled. The room was full of people. Lena felt every set of eyes on her. Most of them were hostile. A few were curious. One set belonged to Sarah, who stood in the corner with her arms crossed and her mouth pressed into a thin line. Aldrich stood, slowly, with effort, but he stood. This is the woman who found me, he said. His voice carried across the room. It wasn't the broken, confused voice from the street. It was the voice of a man who had led an entire territory for 4 decades. I was lost. I was cold. I didn't know my own name, and every soul in this room, every wolf in this territory, failed to find me. Silence. She had nothing, no money, no food, no reason to stop, and she stopped. She fed me. She gave me her bed and slept on the floor. She walked me 10 blocks in the cold to find me help. He looked directly at Sarah. Tell me again who belongs in this territory and who doesn't. Sarah said nothing. That's what I thought. A murmur rippled through the room. Lena felt it. Not just sound. Something physical. Like the air had weight. Then Sarah moved. She stepped forward from the wall and raised her voice. With all respect, Alpha. She is human. She has no place in the pack circle. If you wish to reward her, send her home with money. But bringing her here, into this hall, is an insult to every bonded wolf in this territory. Aldrich sat back down. He didn't respond. He looked at Cale. So did everyone else. Cale stepped into the center of the room. He looked at Lena, really looked at her, then at the room. When I found this woman, he said, I recognized something. A bond. A mate mark. I didn't choose it. She didn't choose it. But it's there. It's real. And I won't pretend otherwise to protect anyone's pride. The room erupted. Voices. Growls. Actual growls. The sound came from deep in people's chests, not from their mouths. Lena's skin prickled. Her heart hammered. She wanted to run. She stayed. Sarah's voice cut through. Then test her. If she carries the mark, let her prove it. In the circle, Cale's jaw tightened. That isn't necessary. It's tradition. Or does tradition only apply when it's convenient for the king? Cale looked at Lena. She could see it in his eyes. He didn't want this, but he also knew that refusing would make things worse. It would confirm what Sarah was already telling the room, that he was protecting something weak. Lena spoke before he could. What's the circle? Every head turned. It's a trial, Sarah said, smiling now. Physical. A test of endurance and will. To see if you can stand among wolves. Lena looked at her. She looked at the room full of people who wanted her gone. She looked at Cale, who was watching her with something between fear and hope. Fine. The circle was a stone pit in the center of the compound. Torchlit, cold, ringed by dozens of pack members who had come to watch the human fail. The stone was old, worn smooth in the center from generations of feet. Lena could feel the history in it. Whatever happened in this place, it had been happening for a very long time. The trial was simple. Endure. Stand in the center of the circle while 3 wolves, in human form but with all their speed and strength, came at her one at a time. She didn't have to fight. She didn't have to win. She just had to stay standing and not submit. Submission meant dropping her eyes, dropping to her knees, bowing her head. The first one was fast. A man with short hair and thick arms. He charged her, stopped inches from her face, and roared. The sound hit her like a wall of pressure. Her ears rang. Her knees buckled. But she locked her legs and stared straight at him. He backed away. The second was worse. A woman who circled her slowly, whispering, You don't belong here. You're nothing. You're meat. You're food. She got close. Close enough that Lena could feel breath on her neck. Lena didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't blink. The woman stepped back. The third was Sarah. She didn't roar. She didn't whisper. She walked straight up to Lena and hit her across the face. Open palm. Hard enough to split Lena's lip. The crowd gasped. That wasn't part of the trial. Lena's head snapped to the side. Blood ran down her chin. She tasted copper. She turned back, looked Sarah dead in the eyes. And she didn't drop. Is that all you've got? Sarah's face twisted. She raised her hand again. Cale moved, but Aldrich's voice came first. Enough. One word. The whole compound went silent. Aldrich was standing at the edge of the circle. He shouldn't have been there. He was supposed to be resting. But there he was, straight-backed, clear-eyed, the full weight of who he used to be burning in his face. She passed, he said, and anyone who disagrees can take it up with me. Nobody disagreed. Cale walked into the circle. He took Lena's face in his hands, gently, looked at the blood on her lip. His eyes went dark, not with anger, with something deeper, something that told Lena this man would burn down his own kingdom before he let anyone touch her again. You didn't have to do that, he said. Yeah, she said. I did. He looked at the crowd, at his pack, at the wolves who had watched a human girl stand in their circle and refuse to break. She is my mate, he said, chosen by the bond. confirmed by the trial. Anyone who challenges this challenges me. Silence. Then, one by one, heads lowered. Not all of them. Not Sarah's. But enough. The room settled. The growls faded into something quieter. Something that wasn't acceptance yet, but was at least the beginning of it. Lena stood in the center of the circle with blood on her chin and fire in her chest. And for the first time in her life, she was not invisible. The days after the circle were strange and quiet. Lena stayed at the compound, not because Cale told her to, because Aldrich asked. "Stay a few days," he'd said, sitting in his chair by the window. Humor an old man. So she stayed. The room they gave her had a real bed, clean sheets, a window that looked out over a garden walled in by stone. She sat on the edge of the mattress that first night and pressed her palms flat against the blanket, just to feel how soft it was. She couldn't remember the last time she'd slept somewhere warm without worrying about the door. Aldrich was better in the mornings. Sharp, funny, even. He told her stories about the territory, about wolves who ran the mountain ridge at dawn, about his late wife, Marie. That was the name he'd been calling Lena on the street. Marie had been his mate. She died 11 years ago, and some days his mind took him back to her. "You remind me of her," he told Lena one morning over tea. "Not your face, your stubbornness." She was the only person in this territory who ever told me I was wrong and meant it. 40 years I led this pack. 40 years of yes. Marie never bowed. Not once. Lena smiled. "I haven't told you you're wrong about anything. Give it time." They talked for hours. Aldrich was a different man in the mornings. Clear. Present. He told her things he probably shouldn't have. About the pack's politics. About Sarah's family, who had expected her to be Cale's mate for years. About the tension between the territories. About a council of alphas who governed the larger structure and who would not take kindly to a human in the bloodline. "They'll come for you," he said. "Not unkindly, just honestly. Not with violence. With procedure, rules, precedents. They'll try to invalidate the bond on technical grounds. Can they do that? They can try. They've never succeeded when the bond is real." Lena looked at him. "How do you know it's real?" Aldrich smiled. "Because my son hasn't slept in 4 days. Because he stands outside your door every night to make sure you're safe, and then leaves before morning so you don't feel pressured. Because I've known that boy his entire life, and I have never, not once, seen him afraid. Until he met you." Lena didn't know what to say to that, so she drank her tea and looked out the window. Cale found her that afternoon. She was walking the garden path. He fell into step beside her. They walked in silence for a while. It was the first time they'd been alone without crisis, without confrontation, without someone trying to test or threaten or challenge. "I want you to know something," he said. She waited. "I didn't come to your apartment because of the bond. I came because of what you did. My father was gone for 3 days. I had 100 wolves searching for him. Train trackers. People who have served my family for generations. None of them found him. You did. I didn't find him. I just stopped. That's the same thing." They walked a few more steps. "I grew up in this compound," Cale said. "I was trained to lead before I could read. Every decision I make affects thousands of lives. I've brokered treaties. I've ended wars. And somewhere in all of that, I forgot what it looks like when someone does something just because it's right. Not for power. Not for status. Just because a person needed help." Lena stopped walking. She turned to face him. "I need you to understand something too," she said. "I'm not going to be owned. I'm not going to be someone's trophy or their symbol. If I stay, if any of this is real, then I stay as myself. On my terms. I work. I choose. I speak. That's not negotiable." Cale looked at her, and for the first time, something that might have been a smile crossed his face. Small, quick, gone almost before she caught it. I wouldn't want it any other way. That evening, Aldrich called Lena to his room. He was sitting in his chair. The silver ring was off his hand. It sat on the table between them. The light from the window was low and golden. Late afternoon. The kind of light that makes everything look like a memory even while it's still happening. I want you to have this, he said. I can't take that. You can. And you will. It's your family crest. Yes, and your family now. Lena looked at the ring. The wolf with its open jaw. The thorns circling it. She thought about the night she found Aldrich on the curb. The thin jacket. The shaking hands. The bowl of tomato soup that was the last food in her apartment. She'd given it without thinking. Without calculation. Without knowing what it would lead to or who it would connect her to. She picked up the ring. It was heavier than she expected. Warm from Aldrich's hand. She slid it onto her thumb. It was too big for her fingers, but on her thumb it held. Aldrich watched her. Then he leaned forward, and his voice dropped. I want to tell you something. He paused. I wasn't as lost as you think I was. Lena looked up. What? My mind comes and goes. That part is real. But the night you found me, I was more present than I let on. I've been walking for 2 days, watching people pass me. Wolves, humans, dozens of them. I wanted to see who would stop. Lena stared at him. You were testing people? I was looking for something, and I found it. You could have died out there. Maybe. But I would have died knowing the answer. Thank you, she said. Aldrich nodded. His eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. Thank you for stopping. That night, Lena stood at the window of her room and looked out at the dark. Somewhere below, she could hear footsteps. Kale, walking his quiet circle, making sure she was safe, making sure she was still there. She thought about the cold sidewalk, the sheltered doorway, the hand on her wrist, the old man on the curb. She thought about what it means to stop when no one else does. How one small act of kindness, not strength, not power, not magic, just basic human decency, had torn open a world she never knew existed and placed her at the center of it. She wasn't the strongest person in this territory. She wasn't the fastest. She wasn't a wolf. She had no bloodline, no training, no claim to power. But she was the one who stopped. On a cold sidewalk, with nothing in her pockets, she was the one who knelt beside a stranger and said, "You okay?" And that, it turned out, was enough.